Hi, my name is Elizabeth McPherson. This is my case study for EDU 851, Teacher Reaction. So an overview of this case study. This case study outlines a situation in which the principal decides to write a negative evaluation and requests the teacher not be rehired. The problem escalates when the teacher does not agree with the rating or the support she's received in return. So we look at who is involved in this case study. We have the principal who ends up being the evaluator. He is evaluating the teacher, Miss Stevens, in her classroom. And we kind of have outlined the students that she's teaching, the behaviors that they're displaying, the kind of the actions they're taking. So they're in Miss Stevens' classroom. It seems like this setting is the school. The principal is going into her classroom to observe. So here's kind of what's happening. Mrs. Stevens is being evaluated by the principal. It seems like it's probably her annual review. It's not specific, but he's going in and doing formal evaluations of her teaching. When the principal observes Miss Stevens' room, the following results kind of come out. Students appear to be insufficiently involved. Students seem disinterested in the classroom procedures. They're not responding to Miss Stevens. When the principal approaches the door, it says that he kind of hears chaos and noise and lots of talking. Seems like they're kind of just talking whenever they want. They're moving around freely. When he gets in the room, he observes very little respect from the students. And Miss Stevens seems to have little influence over the students. They don't seem to really be doing what she's asking or anything like that. So after this evaluation, the principal approaches Mrs. Stevens regarding the observation he has in her class. So she comes to the meeting. She already seems irritable, hostile. She's difficult to talk with. The principal tries to suggest trying to involve the students more, but Miss Stevens is very defensive to his suggestions and his recommendations. She kind of responds that the students are clamming up when he's in the room. He doesn't know what it's like to teach her kids, and so she kind of doesn't really listen to his feedback. So after she leaves, he decides he's going to try to observe again after that conversation, kind of give it one more go. But a similar pattern of student behavior and kind of teacher-student engagement is observed, and Miss Stevens really hasn't made any change since their last observation. So what the principal decides to do is kind of leave that second observation, not have another confrontational conversation with her. He kind of felt the last one was fruitless. So instead, he just goes back, he writes his evaluation, which does end up being on the poor end. And ultimately at the end, in the recommendation, he does not suggest Miss Stevens is renewed, her teaching contract is renewed. So some dilemmas he kind of notes is that if he would write her a favorable recommendation, this year would be granted her tenure. And it kind of notes that he'd be stuck with her with more conflict and maybe more unwillingness to accommodate and learn and grow on that teacher's form. So Miss Stevens is given a formal notice that her evaluation is complete and that she should be meeting with the principal. So when she goes in to meet with the principal, he reviews what he writes in the evaluation, kind of notes that he has recommended her for non-renewal. Miss Stevens ends up throwing the rating back at him. She disagrees, states that it's inaccurate, it's unfair. She states that it's equally the principal's fault because of him being in the room, throwing the kids off, affected the student behavior in her classroom. And Miss Stevens argues that the principal has never even tried to teach her class, has never tried to feel how she's doing, and never given some practical ideas on how to do it. So she feels overall really unsupported by the supervisors and the building. So it kind of ends by her getting up to leave the meeting. She is angry. She is not in agreement with what's happening in the evaluation. And she kind of says, fine, do what you have to do, but I will take legal action because this is an unfair evaluation. So now we feel like the principal is kind of stuck in this decision-making place of what he's going to do to continue with this conflict. So the legal issues I see, I think one of them is this teacher tenure. I think this kind of crosses over legal and ethical, but understanding that teacher tenure offers this probationary period for teachers until they're given this tenure, which puts some restrictions on when the district can fire them. They're not unfireable, it just makes it a lot harder to fire a teacher once they've been tenured. The purpose of the non-tenure period is to try to give schools and teachers, principals, the opportunity to evaluate the teacher to determine if they're effective and a good fit for the school. So it's kind of that legal boundary of that's exactly what this period is for principals and administrators to make good decisions. It also maybe affects the outcome of the situation, being that she's so close to that tenure. Um, and again, with a good evaluation, she would be granted that tenure. So the other legal issue is potentially this idea of due process. So what is she actually entitled to in terms of legal action? So some states do have legal rights to argue removal from their contract, some don't. Many states do have a due process, which requires teachers who are being dismissed to be informed, given the chance to improve, things like that. And every school board policy also has a different grievance process. So I think there could be some legal kind of concerns in terms of what her district states as are her options for grievance on a evaluation. So I think the ethical issues we're running into here are the obligation for the principal to have addressed the matter with more time. It seems like if she's close to tenure, she's been in the district for a while, the case study does outline a pretty rapid fire, like he's observing early in the week, meeting with her on a Thursday, trying to re-observe on a Monday, which only gives her a Friday to really take anything he said into consideration. And then by the end of the week, she's given her notice of non-renewal. So it seems like this process moved pretty quick. Again, we don't have any information about what's happened in the years prior, but it does seem like maybe there's an ethical obligation on the part of the administration to have offered a little bit more time to Ms. Stevens. Also, Ms. Stevens' unprofessional response to her evaluation. Not only did it hurt relationships, but kind of that ethical piece of, if this is how you're going to react, if this is going to be your professional model, like why would the principal want to change his decision? With tenure looming, is that swaying the principal's decision? Could that be an ethical thing where he's making choices to expedite the process because he knows how close she is to tenure? And then kind of what professional development was given. It doesn't indicate that she had any. She kind of indicates she's not being given any. So I wonder what kind of ethical grounds we have there to address the fact that was she really coached and instructed on how to do better? So to synthesize the problem, after several negative observations, Mrs. Stevens' principal is submitting a formal evaluation to include a recommendation for dismissal that Ms. Stevens has made clear she disagrees with and will fight legally if necessary. So again, looking at the people, the principal, the teacher, Mrs. Stevens, and the student in the classroom. It doesn't indicate other administrators are involved, but I feel like at some point there has to probably be some other people, and then the school board who ultimately will kind of agree to that dismissal, agree to that evaluation that's presented in front of them. We assume this is a public school, I guess. We don't really know. We know it's probably a traditional classroom full of kids. The principal can go and observe, but it doesn't kind of tip our hats to elementary, middle, high school. We don't really know what kind of programming this is entailing. So I think that when we review the information, we do see significant potential for damaged relationships. I think, what message will Mrs. Stevens take to her peers? So once she leaves this meeting, she's very hot, she's very angry. What influence does she have on the rest of the staff? If she's held in high regard by the staff, what kind of culture and environment is this going to produce? And I do think it's probably the best way for rumors to start, for Ms. Stevens to take her side of the story one way, for the administration to take their side, and kind of other people to run with it. It could become a really big mess. I think, should circumstances change and Ms. Stevens not be removed, like, then what? Is that trust restorable? Is there respect that can be regained? I would assume there might need to be a new evaluator assigned to her in the future, just to kind of offer fairness and avoid conflict, but I'm not sure, but that could cause some issues too. And then what relationships with the students are affected? How will her attitude going back into the classroom affect knowing that she's just going to be dismissed? How will that actually, probably less learning, less student engagement? And how would the students engage with the staff or the parents in the community once they know what's happening? What rumors are the kids going to kind of start, like, oh, Miss Stevens is getting canned, kind of language. So I do think there's a lot of potential for there to be some strained relationships here. Some questions I would kind of have continuing this case study are, what other conversations were being had between the principal and Miss Stevens? Like, is this the first time she's ever heard of poor performance? Has he been her observer in the past? Kind of where are they in terms of their conversation relationship? Again, in what ways had Miss Stevens expressed her concern for supervision in the past? So kind of the two-way street of the principal communicating to the teacher, but until now, when there's a big conflict, has Miss Stevens ever kind of brought to the attention that she doesn't feel supported. She doesn't feel like she's been given action steps to improve. Did the principals offer terms of clear action for Miss Stevens? Again, he kind of had this meeting with her Thursday and then re-observed on Monday. It doesn't seem like she'd have any time to implement any clear steps had he given them to her. And then what's the history of Miss Stevens? Is she a new teacher, new to the district, new to teaching? Has she had poor performance evaluations in the past? Does she have a good rapport in the community? What are the families and the kids and the teachers saying about her? I think this could all play into how I, as a principal, would make this decision. So a couple choices. The first is some punitive action. So essentially no change from what's happening. Principal can decide to that the response to the evaluation is validated. She's making that the right choice is being made, and he's going to submit the evaluation to the school board and have her dismissed. So the positives to this is it's kind of a principal standing his grounds in terms of what he's decided and kind of sticking to that authority. Maybe avoids more observations and confrontations that have seemed to be fruitful or fruitless in the past. And it sets kind of a clear standard for what they expect classrooms to look like, what classroom management should look like, kind of not letting a teacher get away with maybe kind of chaos, quote unquote. The cons would be like this could potentially drum up some legal issues. She can fight it. It could maybe drag out and be an issue. It might put a bad taste in the school climate. Again, if she was well received by her peers, if whatever kind of split this might cause in the school. And it will probably most definitely cause a disconnect between administration and staff. There's always tension that arises when teachers are non-renewed. Option 2 would be a restorative approach. So the principal could seek to invite other administrators or supervisors into the conflict to mediate, to help create improvement plans for Ms. Stevens. This may include a probationary period before she's removed, kind of giving her a chance, essentially. So the pros to this would be the opportunity to express genuine care for Ms. Stevens and the concern she has that she wasn't supported. It potentially allows for restored trust and respect. Hopefully Ms. Stevens can see this olive branch that they're trying to understand what they did wrong and help her make adjustments as well. Involving more people might just give more witnesses should it become a legal issue. So having more people observing and more people kind of interacting with her, maybe refusal, just gives the school a little bit more grounds to kind of be clear on what's happening. It sets a collaborative mentoring expectation for teachers who are struggling, and it allows the principal to keep maybe the relationship and communication through the school culture. The cons are maybe it's a little too late. If she's not receptive to this, if she's not going to accept it, it might just be too late. Ms. Stevens could not follow a plan. They could offer this restorative approach, help her set up a plan, give her time, and she might be unwilling to do it. And it might give kind of other teachers leverage to kind of have this do a bad job and fix it later mentality if they think that they're going to keep getting second chances. And the third would be to just reverse the action altogether. If the principal could feel the legal repercussions of the decision are not worth the bad publicity, change the recommendation, keep her hired, kind of erase the check marks and move on. So it might avoid further conflict. It might allow Ms. Stevens an opportunity to prove herself and avoid the legal issues. And it might take into account some of the lack of support, time, and change that she was given on the school's part. But the cons, I think, definitely are that we're not demonstrating any consistency or authority, kind of this you can whine and get your way, stomp your feet and things will change kind of mentality. Might allow other teachers to get out of bad evaluations. This sets a precedent that like evaluations can be reversed based on kind of a big enough fuss. It doesn't really restore any trust. It kind of just wipes it away. And it does discredit the evaluation process. I think should this decision be reversed, it would really put into question how equitable and fair and meaningful the evaluation process of the school really is. So I do think option 2 is the best. It allows the principal to extend mutual respect and consideration for his staff. It gives Ms. Stevens the space to express her concerns without feeling maybe that she's just going to get fired. It does involve neutral parties by asking other people to come in, look at what's happening, supervise Ms. Stevens. It might give some separation between her and the principal and also make her feel more supported. It creates an action plan to give tangible help. So it addresses Ms. Stevens' complaint that she was not getting useful support, and it provides the opportunity for Ms. Stevens to change. So if she changes, she kind of builds that rapport with the principal and she's given the opportunity to learn and grow. If she doesn't change, it does offer a clear process that they gave her the opportunity and she wasn't able to use it well. So kind of my first step that I would take if I were the principal is I would find out the facts, evaluate what's really happening, get useful, accurate student performance data, student engagement issue, look at what professional support she's taken, what professional development have we given her, just really look at all of the truthful things that are happening in her classroom and the ways that we have grown her as a teacher. Then I would request additional support. I would try to seek another administrator to come in. I would ask someone else to observe or see if they're seeing what I see. And it just provides this multiple angle for Ms. Stevens to maybe not have to feel like I am cutting her and that's it. Then I would meet and create an action plan. So I'd have Ms. Stevens come in again with the other people that have observed her, try to address the things that were the same that they saw, maybe some differences that they saw, and create an action plan for her. Maybe pick what's the most important thing to improve so it's not like, here's 18 things you're doing wrong or you're going to get fired. And then give her time to implement them. Make sure that she's feeling equipped to do that, and make sure she's involved in the whole process. After that, gather more information. So continue to collect reliable information on how she's progressing, looking at the action steps that you created as the team. Is she being held accountable to that improvement? Are the administrators accountable to the follow-up and the support that she said she wasn't getting? Then after that, maybe make more decisions based on her willingness to do the plan, her willingness to communicate, improvement with student engagement. Then we can make a decision and involve all parties. It might still result in a poor evaluation and her termination, but at least we kind of provided the opportunity for her to make a change. So a couple outcomes, Ms. Stevens could respond. She could be receptive of the action plan. She could kind of change her attitude, be willing to collaborate, work hard, get the support, make the changes. Administration can really come in and support her, and she can avoid removal and probably mend a lot of those school relationships. The second option would be like she's kind of in it, but like still pretty salty, maybe. So she maybe agrees to this restorative approach. It's going to save her job, so we're just going to do it because we don't want to get fired. Her attitude doesn't really change, but she's addressing some of the things they had her address on the action steps. She's kind of doing it, but maybe still rude, maybe still not super receptive. She makes some changes, but it's not going to mend relationships. It still may or may not result in her removal. And then the last option, with this restorative, the last outcome could be that she just says no, like, nope, go ahead, submit it. I'm going to take legal action. I have no interest in working this out from the school perspective. I'm not changing. I'm not doing it wrong. The cards are going to just have to fall as they may when I file a formal complaint. So I think that kind of wraps it up. I would hope Ms. Stevens would kind of take this opportunity to learn and grow, that the administration could maybe admit their faults where it's necessary, and a good rapport could be built with the community.